Dr. Cook from URMC will be coming on too. Luke, you hear me? Yeah, I know it says starter. Good morning. This is Brett Provenzano from the Fairport Central School District. Welcome to our community town hall on our school reopening. This is probably our 7th town hall that we have had on this very, very important conversation reopening our schools. I'm proud to say that we have been interacting with our community throughout this process. We have been learning through these forums, in addition to thought exchanges, surveys, and these online forums have been quite informative. I have a number of people here with me here. I have Kelly Hodge, who is our PTA rep throughout this process. Sarah Driscoll, who is our K through 5th grade PTA rep, and Sonia Vrilla is also here, who is one of our leaders through the Parent-Teacher Association. They have been incredible advocates. They've been organizing the data and the questions that continually come in. These questions, if all of these are not answered in this forum, be assured we have a FAQ section on our website that is continually being updated. I also have with me here today board member Joyce Kostick. Again, Joyce has been invested along with our other board members, very interested in our process, making sure that our expectations to meet students where they are and our whole child vision and mission is not compromised during this reopening. Mr. Sliz, our vice president of the Board of Education, will be coming in moments' notice. Dr. Cook from the University of Rochester Medical Center, Strong Pediatrics, will be coming online soon. I have a number of our elementary principals here and directors pertaining to our reopening plans are present. We're going to start right off with our community town hall, and I will be sharing the educational plans. And I just want to make sure that what I'm seeing on here, Mr. Yeager, is what they're seeing. So this is a live screen. Or do I need to share it? I need to share it, right? So let's share that. Yep, thank you. Really appreciate it. Today's session will focus on the plans that have been chosen by parents. We'll be sharing information about these plans and how we are moving forward. There are a number of questions that we were able to glean from a survey that was shared Friday and was open till late last night. We'll be talking about the hybrid model, K-12, and the 100% remote learning model. We also have information on COVID testing and contact tracing, which will be a focus of tonight's session at 6:30. This is for our elementary parents. This particular session, the 1 o'clock session, will be for our secondary parents. And again, tonight will be focused on health and safety protocols. So without further ado, I'm going to have Sarah Driscoll just start asking some questions, and I have some incredible principals here that will be introducing themselves, and we'll move through this hour. We're going to stay true to the hour time frame. This broadcast will be on Facebook Live and YouTube for further viewing. Sarah Driscoll.
Thanks, Brett. So again, I'm Sarah Driscoll. I am a PTA rep for the K through 5 families in our district. And we've gone through the questions that you guys sent in, and I will be asking some of those today. So one of the questions I saw come up the most is, will children be able to get into the buildings and have orientations before school starts? See their classroom, whether they're new to a building or returning to a building.
So what I will do is I'll defer right to the principals, but I just want to introduce our amazing principals that are here today at this forum. We have Dr. Karen Finger, who is the principal at Dudley School. We have Mrs. Klus, who is the principal at Brooks Hill, and Mr. Charno, who is the new principal at Jefferson Avenue School. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I can take that question, Sarah. We are actually going to be offering meet and greet opportunities across the district, K through 5, for all of our students. As buildings, we have collaborated and agreed on meet and greet dates for August 27th, August 28th, and August 31st. The exact times of each teacher's meet and greet will be coming out very soon. What we are looking to do is in order to mitigate the number of kids and families that are in the building, we are asking that our teachers use the cohorting that we have created for their classes so that each cohort will only be in the building for a short period of time so that we can stay within the recommended guidelines of having no more than approximately 12 people in the classroom. Additionally, we are asking that each child only bring one adult into the building to help manage those numbers as well.
And just in addition to that, the practice will be all children and adults will wear masks, and we'll have sanitizing practices prior to entering just to make it the safest experience possible.
Thank you very much. So another question that I get a lot is, what will social interaction look like in the elementary grades? And will children be able to play together and be in their small groupings as they have in the past, as far as stations, reading time, free time?
This is Meredith Klus, principal at Brooks Hill. It's nice to be speaking with all of you. So that's a great question, Sarah. It's actually a great question because I think what our families and our students and what we're all seeking is some sense of normalcy. And we know that in education, that play and those opportunities to be social are a big part of the normalcy of school. So yes, we are working with our teachers. We're all having conversations in faculties and grade level meetings already about what that looks like at various grades. So our expectation is that kids will have a chance to move around, still abiding by the 6 feet and the masking. So for example, in our younger grades, we have ordered yoga mats that can be sanitized, where kids will have the opportunity to get away from a desk and be on the floor, where they'll have opportunities to play with toys that will then be set aside for a number of days to be sterilized. We'll have opportunities for kids to go outside and be social. All of our buildings have been working on spaces that are not related to our PE classes being outside, where kids will be rotated through for recess time, so we can limit the numbers on our playgrounds, but we can offer grassy areas and blacktop and tracks, and just depending on our own building makeups, we're working on schedule so that the kids can be out, be social, and at times when they're far enough apart, be unmasked for mask breaks during that time. And for our youngest kids, we are hoping that kids can be within small clusters, maybe a partner near another partner sharing a bucket of toys that can be sanitized, of course with the strict protocol of them washing their hands before and after such activities. So we do very much look forward to brainstorm and seeing how things unfold so that our kids can get some of those social interactions in.
Thank you. Anything else from Dr. Finger or Mr. Charno?
Honestly, Meredith did a great job.
I concur.
We also have, entering into this session is Dr. Stephen Cook from the University of Rochester Medical Center, specializing in pediatrics. He is also a representative from the State Department of Health. We welcome Dr. Cook to this Zoom. Mrs. Driscoll.
Yes, so you touched on it a little bit. Will children be in their classrooms all day? So this is kind of a multi-step question, and I don't want to miss any of it because I know a lot of parents had questions. What will specials look like and lunchtime look like? And you've talked a little bit about going outside of recess time, but what about those other times?
Yep, I'm going to lean in close. I'm seeing those responses in the comments. I hope you can hear me well. So yes, we expect that students will not be in their class the whole entire day. As Meredith shared, while they are in their class, we want to work on some creative ideas such as the yoga mat, so students are able to not just be maybe at a specific desk, but think creatively how to use space and ensure still our safe CDC guidelines. As far as lunches, students in the different elementary schools will be having lunch within their cafeteria as well as their gymnasiums. We need to have that extra space of the gymnasiums in order to ensure we can decrease densities and spread students out safely. Also, students will have opportunities, as Meredith mentioned, that we're going to have a variety of outdoor spaces that our classrooms will be able to access throughout the day to extend and take learning outside, as well as spaces outside for special area classes to get outside. PE specifically, the goal is to get outside as much as possible. When they can't get outside, there will be mindfulness and other sort of activities that will occur in the child's classroom. The special area teachers will be transporting to classrooms. Students will not be moving to special area classes. Rather, we'll be bringing special area teachers to classrooms and getting outside as often as possible. In addition to recess time on the playground, knowing that we can have only small cohorts of students on the playground equipment at a time, we're going to maximize our outdoor space and use the grass areas and paved areas around our perimeters of our schools as well as our courtyards, because we know getting outside will be important for one, just ensuring a safe environment, but also mixing it up for students so they're not just in their classroom the whole entire day, and provide so hopefully some normalcy and some more spreading out.
Thank you, Mr. Charno. At any point in time, if Kelly Hodge, who is a PTA representative, I know she's there to support the 612 area, please feel free to ask follow-up questions or to add some thoughts. Board member Joyce Kostick as well, and Dr. Cook, please feel free to elaborate on any of these positions from your lens. Thank you, or excuse me, these questions from your lens. Thank you. Ms. Driscoll.
I do want to address, I'm seeing in the comments, I'm going to go over what the hybrid day would look like, and then I will address what a virtual schedule would look like. So don't worry, I am going to get to that if that's your concern. And now I lost my spot. Give me just a second.
Sarah, while you're finding your spot, I just wanted to confirm, there was a question in the comments asking about if kids that are going to be doing the virtual day, if they will have an opportunity to meet their teachers as well, and the answer is yes. We are going to incorporate those meet and greets right into our meet and greet schedules for all students.
Because a lot of children in the district will be using some form of childcare on the off days, what will the independent learning days look like? So not the virtual day, but the independent day. Will there be a set schedule that they need to log in and be on the computer certain hours of the day, or is that time that they can do when they can fit it in? And how is attendance taken?
So Sarah, you're talking about when they're in the hybrid model and they're having their remote learning days. We're, as an administrative staff, trying to get good at calling the days certain things instead of using interchangeable language, so we remember what we're talking about. So in the hybrid model, you have obviously your in-school days and then the remote learning days on the 2 days that you'll be home. And so, yes, there will be some need to connect in, but we recognize that you have a variety of situations out there with families being in daycare, or maybe at a relative's, or maybe you're working with your neighbors. And so we understand that there can't be an incredible amount of online screen time. So those days that you're doing your remote learning, there will be some time where you will potentially join the class in like a morning announcements type piece. But in general, the independent work that your child will be doing will be a follow-up to the learning that was done in class the previous day. So that will vary. I saw in the comments there was a question about the length of time, and that will obviously vary by grade level. We understand that our youngest learners cannot sustain their attention on a screen, and nor is it good for them health-wise for lengthy periods of time. So it will be, no more than an hour of independent work on those off days, the remote learning days. In the upper grades, obviously, that will increase as kids' independence and responsibility increases. I don't know if Karen or Ryan, you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, also on the remote at-home days, when they're not in person with that cohort, there'll be around a 20 to 30-minute direct instruction, live instruction, synchronous we've also been using in the area of ELA and/or math, and we're working on that plan, but our expectation is a 20 to 30-minute synchronous live lesson in ELA or math on the at-home days, in addition to the extension work that's brought home following the in-person day, as well as the asynchronous offerings and special area offerings that we'll be working on developing.
Mr. Charno, can you please tell the difference between asynchronous and synchronous?
Yeah, great question. We use those terms a lot. It's education. So synchronous being live, it's occurring in that moment. Asynchronous being recorded or not live, something that can be accessed anytime, but it is not occurring live with live comments or feedback.
Thank you.
Sarah, would it make sense, and since we're talking about the hybrid model, to talk about the virtual Wednesday now as well? Because we've, obviously, when they're in school, their day looks very much like we've described in school, a traditional day, and we've just described the 2 remote learning days. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. That I was getting to that, so I really appreciate.
Okay, sounds
jumping
good.
in.
And I see it's coming up in the comments. So if you're in the hybrid model, or if you are in the all virtual model, the Wednesday looks similar. And what we have devised is that in the morning of the Wednesday, from 9 to 11:30, that time will be core instruction with your classroom teacher, meaning that it could be some whole groups, some small groups, some one-to-one time, much like it would look in a normal year, where the teacher is moving about doing some whole groups, some mini lessons, some small groups, some one-on-ones. And then again, that's 9 to 11:30. Then we'll take a break from 11:30 to 12:30 for students and staff for lunch and just a general health break. And then 12:30 to 3, students will have access to about 25 minutes of a special area time. And then that's also when any of our students who need related services or support services would receive those services. If your child doesn't have any of those needs, they might get additional time with, any number of people, like Brian was just speaking about, the specialists as a supplement to the instruction going on. But again, it's primarily morning is core with the classroom teacher, afternoon is some special area time along with any support services that they might need. And one of the very purposeful pieces there is to allow the teachers in the afternoon on Wednesday to have some concentrated collaboration time, because we know that in the spring, one of the things that we learned is that there was a lot of inconsistency from teacher to teacher, grade to grade, school to school, and that was something we heard loud and clear from parents, and so we have intentionally worked time in so that we can collaborate across buildings, across grades, and within grades, so that you're getting the same experience for your child, whether your child's in the all virtual or the hybrid model.
Meredith, you went over times, the morning looking 9 to 11:30, in the afternoon kind of looking 12:30 to 3. Will that be the same for JA students? Is their school time changing?
It will be for the purpose of the hybrid pieces.
Correct. That Wednesday, all elementary schools will be on the same schedule, starting at 9 a.m.
So Wednesday, all elementary kids are on the same schedule, but on the in-school days, they'll follow their normal hours, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, I just wanted to clarify that. So on there, also something that I just want painted very clearly, on Wednesdays, kids that are Monday, Thursday, and then the kids that are Tuesday, Friday will all be together virtually with their teacher in a Google Meet. So they'll get to see the kids that they aren't seeing the other half of their classmates.
I understand what you're asking, Sarah. So we've gone back and forth on the value of both options. And I think one of the things we feel like is there's a lot of value in having the two cohorts come together. But we also recognize that any of you who watched a kindergarten or first grade full class Google Meet might recognize that it might not have been as productive as what we would hope it to be, especially with our increased academic focus. However, we recognize there's value in pulling the kids together for social emotional reasons as well. So I'm going to be a little gray in my answer in that we all feel like depending on the grade level and the intention behind the meeting, there might be times where the whole cohort pulls together, which in the afternoon with the special area teacher, they will be all together. But in the morning, it might very much depend on the needs of the student and also the grade level, because management of students on a Google Meet is also really key to having it be an effective time for everybody. And while I just have the mic, I just want to go back to a couple quick questions in terms of lunch. It is 6 feet apart in the lunchroom as regulated in order to take off masks. And so that's why we're all using our cafeterias and our gymnasiums. However, we are working hard to make sure so that students can see one another and still be spaced apart, meeting the health regulations. So we're working very hard at that, and it is coming along nicely. Thank you.
And another thing I'm just noticing in the comments, just want to address, so while we have that 9 to 11:30 time, it's not going to be, students are not going to be expected to, our young children sitting in front of that screen, not moving with virtual instruction for that whole entire time. So it's going to be a combination of whole group, small group, breakout sessions. It will not be the students sitting still and expected to be engaged in that for hours at a time. It's going to be broken up into manageable sections.
One thing that I would like to mention is that we see that there is a chat line, and we'll do our best to monitor the chat line, but we also know that there was a survey, and there are many questions that we are using that survey as a springboard to greater conversations. So if you do not see us responding to your chat, we will be reviewing chat questions and updating it to our FAQs that are continually an evolving document. Thank you very much. Mrs. Driscoll, please.
Will there still be the need for room parents, and will they be assigned? And what will parent involvement look like in the building this school year?
So at Dudley, I'll speak for Dudley specifically. We have moved forward with continuing with room parents, and we expect that it may look a little bit different. There may be some things that we are asking our room parents to do in more of a virtual way rather than an in-person way. But I fully expect that the need will still very much be there, especially with teachers having two cohorts. There might be opportunity for our room parents to do some of those community building activities that will help bring those cohorts together as one united classroom. So we are definitely moving forward. I believe the other buildings are as well, but I won't speak for them.
I'll just speak for Brooks Hill because we did away with room parents a number of years ago and used parent volunteers in a different way. But similar to Karen, we'll be looking for kind of new brainstorms, working with our PTA. They've already got some good ideas about ways that we can involve parents that might not be in person because we are limiting visitors. We are all not allowing parents to come for lunch. We are all not encouraging parents to drop off down in the classroom in the initial days of school like they may have in the past. So we will have to be rethinking how we can get them involved.
Yeah, JA is thinking the same thing as Karen had mentioned, and we know that more than ever during this unique opening, we're going to need to stay connected and have a strong connection between school and home, and we know room parents will really be a great vehicle for supporting us with that.
For virtual parents and for the remote learning days, will families have access to technology? And like it was in the spring, will it be based on the number of children in the home?
I'm happy to answer that, although I know Tom Devitt is in the room, so if he wants to chime in, he certainly can. We are in a good position in terms of being able to offer more devices than ever before. And so I'll turn it over to Tom, because a survey is coming out that will be really critical for parents to fill out and turn in so that we can address that issue. Tom?
There's going to be multiple phases to this. We are going to be offering families an ability to request a device in the first phase so that we can hand out any available device that we currently have in the district. Yeah, it's lit. Hello, hello? Still? There we go. Okay. Hopefully, well, I'll start over. We're going to be handing out devices in a few different phases this year. We're going to have a survey come out this week that's going to allow families to let us know whether or not they need a device for the start of school. We're going to do our best to get every device that we have in the district out to families for the start. We've also have multiple waves of orders that we expect to receive in waves through September and October. On the survey, there is a detail of this phased-in option, so there'll definitely be plenty of devices.
So, Mr. Devitt, while I have you here, Tom Devitt is our Director of Technology, and, he's the person behind the screen, if you will, when it comes to distributing computers, our infrastructure, et cetera. So my question is, will parents or children be able to use their personal devices as we start the school year out, as we're trying to make sure that our students have devices? Will it be okay for my children to use a device that they may have?
Absolutely. In the survey, we actually place a question in there whether or not you'd have a preference of using your own personal device. So when a student logs in with their fairport.org email account, their environment is configured for them. So their launch zone is set up for their building, for all the software that they need, and their gateway to all of their instructional needs are set up regardless of the device that they actually use. As long as they log into Chrome through a Chrome browser on a Windows device, or if they just log into a Chromebook with their fairport.org email, they'll have that environment protected for them and filtered.
I'd like to follow up with another question, and I had the privilege of having access to the Google survey. Thank you very much to our PTA for organizing that, and I know that there's a question out there, I think, in our audience about a parent tutorial, if you will. Will we be providing information, resources to families, so when we're talking about Parent Square, they know what that is? When we're talking about how to use certain types of pieces on Google Meets or Google Classrooms, are we going to do a little preview or podcast so parents can be informed?
Yeah, we've received a lot of feedback from parents about, how can we have a single place to go for information, whether it's help tutorials or it's communication from principals or whatnot. So we're going to be leading all of this work with trying to reduce all of the information that's on the website and put it in centralized places. So parents.fairport.org is currently our parent portal to School Tool, NutriKids, and food service and whatnot, but we're going to have that continue to be a gateway to Parent Square, where we're going to have resources for online tutorials. We're making a website for staff, students, and parents that's going to contain very similar resources. Google has a number of resources as well that are already built for parents that respond to a lot of these good questions.
And this will be an evolving site, and as we move along, that will continue to be populated, but I would imagine that we're going to kick that off by September 1st. As our teachers are orienting and getting acclimated, we'll be sharing information with parents and continuing to build on that. Obviously, it won't all happen at once, but we will put the most pertinent information on how-tos on that site, and we'll make sure that it's part of my communications moving forward so parents have access. Thank you, Mr. Devitt.
Yep.
Mrs. Driscoll.
So I'm going to move into the virtual portion, and if the main question is, when they have a teacher, they'll be with the set classroom every day for the whole year. Are they being also clumped into cohorts that they'll be learning with
Yes.
those days?
Yes, virtual students are going to be cohorted just like our hybrid students.
And will they have live instruction every day that was similar to what you described for the Wednesday virtual for the hybrid kids?
Yes, our virtual model is actually mirroring our hybrid model, just in a virtual setting. So our teachers that are teaching the virtual model will be meeting with their cohorts 2 days per week throughout the day, and then they will also have 2 days of the remote learning where they are completing tasks that they were taught in the live versions.
I see a really good thought out there about having virtual room parents as well. Thank you for that great feedback, and building community in that setting will be a priority. Point well taken. I'm going to ask Deborah Miles, who is our Director of Student Services, a question regarding social emotional well-being. And for our virtual students, and even for our hybrid, but let's just stay with our virtual. How are we going to make sure that we're understanding where they are from a social emotional lens?
Right. Let's make sure this is working before I start. Can everybody hear me? No? Hello? Turn that one off. Oh, so it'll start working inevitably. Of course. So, all right. Good morning. So I mean, obviously, we're going to be keeping track of our virtual kids just the same as we would our kids who are physically present a couple of days a week. So our mental health staff, our social workers, our psychologists, and our school counselors will be tracking our virtual kids and tracking attendance and tracking, all of those things that we do. I think one of the biggest components I've heard from parents about the virtual program is not so much about the mental health. You always have access to our supports in school. So teachers that are working virtually with kids will be able to kind of see how kids are doing. They'll be able to tell us if they're engaging or not engaging. We'll certainly follow up. That's probably one of the biggest benefits of Fairport owning their virtual program, right, is we're going to have access to those students and make sure that we're providing supports as needed. But the other piece that I hear from virtual parents is the extracurricular activities. Are our kids going to have the same options that the hybrid kids are going to have? And so, yes, the quick answer is, because I think we're talking, and I don't want to speak for everybody in the audience, but when we talk about clubs and things like that, we're pretty much looking at those. If they're running at all, they're running virtually. So our virtual kids who are out 100% of the time versus our hybrid kids, everybody will have access to those clubs as they would any other time. Is that correct? Some of our admins, right? Nodding yes. So they'll be able to engage that way as well, and they'll be able to engage in their music program as well. Pam Serrani is our Director of Special Programs, and she's working diligently with our music department in terms of instruments and vocal music and so forth. So if you're a virtual student and you play an instrument, then certainly the expectation is that you'll still continue to do that. We'll just be looking at it through a virtual model. So all of those things will be in place. I think the room parent piece is a nice idea for us to kind of brainstorm and think about how that would support our teachers in our rooms. I know that parents in the virtual world are looking to be as helpful as possible and trying to be as creative and coming up with ideas of how to keep kids engaged in the whole school community, not just out there on their own little island. So we'll certainly be cognizant of that as well.
Thank you. Another question I want to address, I think I'm going to start with Mr. Devitt. You can come to the forefront really quickly. And it's regarding the directory. Sometimes people aren't getting the emails, or we don't have the right or updated emails. So how can we, as a parent, make sure, where can they go to make sure that we have updated information, that we have the databases are aligned? Sometimes emails change. Can you please take a moment?
Yeah, if anybody ever has any problem, always use your main office to update and verify your current email on file. We're actually going through a major overhaul right now where we're going to be reviewing all of the emails as we launch Parent Square. So we're going to be sending out a blast this Wednesday inviting and introducing Parent Square. There's also multiple letters that are being printed as we speak that's going to go out and introduce it as well. But always contact your main office so they can verify with you what email address we have on file, and duplicate emails. So if you have a family email assigned to a primary parent and also a secondary parent. It really helps to have individual emails for each of those parents so that we can make sure that we have a separate environment for everybody.
Mr. Devitt, elevator conversation, 30 seconds or less. What is Parent Square?
Parent Square is a unified parent communication platform so that instead of just using email, we'll be able to make posts just like a Facebook group and have all of your communications for your students live in a central place. There's an app for it, and there's also a texting facility for it, and also it will use voicemail if it can't reach you on snow days as well.
Thank you very much. I have a question regarding special education, and I know that, these children, we are honored to serve all of our children. There are individual needs, individual education plans that we are honored and obligated to serve. We talk about continuum of our services, and I know that there's going to come a time in the very near future where we interact with our special ed parents, because there is some special programming out there. Students will be coming to school 4 out of 5 days, and we want to make sure that we ask their questions so they know the range of services that we're offering, but also have an opportunity to talk to their direct service provider. And, we're definitely not overlooking this very important population who we serve. I don't know if there's a principal out there who wants to have a general comment, because I do know that we are in the process of ironing out those details in the K-5 world and then having it filtered through our buildings. Is there a principal who wants to comment on that, or did I capture that accurately?
I think the way you captured it, Brett, was accurate. Thank you.
Mrs. Driscoll?
Will there be times during the week when a child is not in school, but if they have questions, that they're able to meet one-on-one with their teacher or get questions answered, especially for our younger group that wouldn't necessarily be in an email? I know we're already asking so much of our teachers, but I know parents are concerned of, on those at-home days, if my kids have questions, how am I getting those answered? Especially if they're on like a Monday, Thursday, and they're not back in a classroom till Monday.
Every teacher absolutely will be checking in with their kids to make sure that any questions that they might have are answered. Some of them may be doing, some small group check-in, or it might be a whole class check-in, but they will be checking in with their kids.
One of the things to remember as well, the work that's sent home, for example, if in person on a Monday cohort, the ELA activity or math activity that comes home in person for the at-home on the next day, in that case Tuesday, will be an extension of what they were learning, and it should be able to be done by the student independently. Obviously, we know some students might provide some support, so we're hoping those questions will be minimized, but certainly we'll work on finding a way for communication so that we can take advantage of that at-home remote time as well.
So I'm getting some feedback that I've bounced around a little. Could you lay out what a week will look like, a rundown of what parents can expect for the hybrid? So they're in school, they're 2 days a week, and then they're in their independent day, and they have their virtual day. But can you just, once again, start to finish run down what that will look like for those kids? Does that make sense? So when they're at home, we've talked about they'll be doing independent study. What does that look like for parents? They're really concerned about their childcare and when they're not home during the day. And I know we've touched on this, but I'm just still getting a lot of feedback. What is the expectation for those remote days?
Sure. I know it's hard to be super clear. So what I would say is the 2 days that they're in school look like any other year, any other day. They'll have their lunch and their recess and their special. I saw a question about what is specials. That would be art, music, health, library, PE. I might be forgetting one. Their day will look, in essence, the same as it always is. That day, they'll be doing work, new learning, new teaching, that the teacher will then send them home with information, follow-up activities, like Ryan was just saying, in ELA, in math, potentially in science and social studies, providing some online resources that they could go to explore some science and social studies concepts, but also physical, materials so that they can work independently. Because in creating this model, we definitely recognize what I see in the comments repeated, and I think, Sarah, what you're referring to is if you're a working parent and your child is someplace other than home with the guidance and support of an adult, they really need to be able to work on things independently. So like Ryan was just saying, it's not necessarily new learning or new teaching that they'll be doing. They might have some exposure to new concepts that the teacher would then follow back up on when they see them in person again. But it will be primarily follow-up from the days of in-person. On the Wednesday, they will again have more directed, connected time with their teacher in that morning block of chunk. And no, it won't be straight 9 to 11:30, I'm in front of a screen every Wednesday. It will be probably some whole group and some small group instruction broken up by child need like we would always do in an elementary classroom. And then in the afternoon, they would have one chunk of time that they would be on their computer working with a special area teacher. Again, that would be art, music, so on. Or if they needed services, that's where they would get their online support services such as speech, perhaps. And the only other thing I would say to the day where they're remote learning that they would need to view into would be that specialist reading and math lesson that we're hoping will help. Really, the intention behind that, and we're still developing it, but the intention behind that is that the reading and math specialists are experts in those areas, and at least for the very beginning of the school year before they start digging deeper with kids who need extra reading and math support, which is what they would typically be doing starting in October, November-ish, and any year, is that they can start to gap fill some of the skills that our kids missed out on in the spring of last year. So I hope that is about as clear. I know it's hard to explain it in person. The superintendent's email that went out Friday, if you haven't had a chance to, I know there's a lot in there with a lot of links, but it's definitely worth your time to get in there and really try to take a peek and see where your child fits in. So hopefully that helps.
Great job. Thanks, Meredith.
So if I'm a parent and my child's at a childcare, excuse me, and I just, for some reason, I'm not able to get in, attendance is defined in many different ways through the state education department during this time period. And it could be a sign-in later in the day into a Google Classroom. It could be again, that sign is logged. It could be a completed assignment that the teacher gave and will then again in turn look at that the next day that the student's in class. So we are still ironing out the definitions for attendance, but us having a pulse on the work being completed, the sign-ins being completed, will be an indicator for attendance. I know that's not as clear as we'd like it, but we do also know that families have different ways that they're going to be providing childcare for their children, and it's not always going to be in front of a computer. But there will be opportunities with that independent work that Mr. Charno was speaking about, or a lesson where they can press play and review it and then come back and complete an assignment that verifies attendance. How'd I do, principals? Getting there? All right. Thank you. Mrs. Driscoll?
Will the Wednesday virtual time with the teachers be recorded? Just piggybacking onto what Brett said, will those live sessions be recorded so kids that are not able to be present be able to go back and watch those?
I'll say that. That's a great question. And in consulting with my colleagues nearby me, although 6 feet apart, we have not talked about that at length. I know we've brainstormed about that, so that's something that we appreciate being brought up as a question, because it's something we can go back and talk with our colleagues in the other buildings and solidify. It's very easy technologically to record a meet and presentation, so it's something we definitely will consider. I know as a parent, I'm looking for as many opportunities to have things recorded as is possible, because I know that probably like me, there are many parents out there who will be balancing, finding some time in the evening or on the weekend to maybe do some of that work. Not that that's what anyone is wishing for and hoping for, but if it needs to be done, I know there are many parents that are hoping for that opportunity. So we'll take that back as a note. We appreciate it. And just while I'm on here, Mr. Provenzano, there's a lot of questions about music lessons as a result of Deb Miles's comment earlier about music. I just wanted to make note that Pam Serrani, as Deb said earlier, is working actively with the instrumental music teachers to try and make sure that our incoming new students at 4th grade at orchestra and 5th grade at band do have an opportunity to start their program off virtually, even if our ensembles and things can't run. So there is work being done to onboard those kiddos who signed up for a new instrument, and that just hasn't been communicated yet. It's still in the works.
Thank you. It will be different, but the expectation and hope remains that, this could be done virtually, and we'll continue to study it and understand how it applies. Mrs. Miles, the positive behavior intervention teams this summer created virtual learning experience expectations. And, I know that in this presentation I'm going to try to get to in a second, we speak to that from the K-5 world or lens. Do you want to spend some time while I get there?
Yeah, so, and you've nicely posted them online, right? So we have a condensed kind of one-pager of what the K-5, 6, 12 virtual expectations are for students. They are on the webpage. And so it really just outlines and it does align with our PBIS program in terms of what we would expect of a student physically in the classroom. Okay, so it's just online at home, what is the optimal place for you to learn? What is the environment around you? What are the materials that you need? Your schedule is still your schedule, so being on time, not bringing toys, all of those fun little things that would be distracting to a student following along with their teacher. When to use the mic, when not to, when to raise your hand, all those fun details about how to be in a virtual class have been outlined online for parents to look at themselves, so that parents have also an understanding of how the virtual program works and that it's really for students, and that you guys kind of work behind the scenes with the kids when they're on their independent work as needed. But then in addition to that, when our kids are physically present, our PBIS teams have put together PowerPoint presentations and a lesson plan for our teachers to use as well, to go over those expectations in class for the hybrid days that they're not there. So they'll be able to go through that. There's some nice pictures that show what a virtual online experience looks like versus what laying around in your bed with your pet and your toys and your iPhone and all of those other things look like. So there's a difference between being virtually online in a class and being relaxed at home in your bedroom.
It's a big deal, and I think whoever asked that question out there, I think it's right on the money. I think it's a great question, and I think there's expectations that as an organization we need to adhere to, and there's expectations that students need to adhere to, and a strong understanding from parents on what we need to make sure that we create the right environments that's conducive to learning and productivity. So we can record, and we can know that we're all bound by code of conducts and expectations for all school members. Thank you, Mrs. Miles.
While we're looking at the slide on the virtual, just like we did with the hybrid model, can we go through this exact schedule of what the virtual days are going to look like for those families? You touched on it earlier as far as they're going to be in cohorts and have
So,
live certain
yeah,
days.
so I know that there's a lot of questions still floating around out there on the virtual model, and it's going to, like, the format of the virtual model is going to follow the hybrid model. I think what parents are hoping for is to know, like, what exactly is the day going to look like in terms of when are they going to be doing ELA, when are they going to be doing math? And what's important to understand is that the virtual teachers are going to be following their master schedule. That we haven't even sent that out to our teachers yet. They get that, before they come back to school. So what you need to understand is that it's going to be different. We can't tell you it's all going to be exactly the same. So your child will follow a similar schedule as the kids that are in the hybrid model would follow. There will be a concerted time that is going to be spent on ELA, likewise with math, science and social studies. They will have a special area class, which, as Meredith indicated, would be library, health, PE, music, art. And they will also have access to any type of related service, speech, OT, PT, and any academic support such as reading and or math that they might need. So if you look at the hybrid model, the virtual model will function very much exactly the same way, just in a virtual setting. I saw that there was a question, and it asked if students in the virtual model would also participate in the Wednesday. Yes, absolutely. So they will basically be cohorted and have 2 live days of instruction, either a Monday, Thursday, or a Tuesday, Friday, and then also have that virtual day on Wednesday with everybody else. They would also have the same distance learning kinds of expectations that the children that are in the hybrid model would have, which would mean that they would have exposure to some type of a live ELA and math. They would also have independent activities or assignments that they would be completing based on their live instruction day, and then also have access to additional special area classes that they might want to do a little bit more in, particularly those kids that might really enjoy art or music or PE or health. There will be other opportunities for them to engage in those things as well.
So a point of clarification, will the virtual students receive more instruction or more opportunities to learn than the hybrid students because they have a virtual class?
It's actually exactly the same, which was exactly the reason why we did it that way. We could not have children in a virtual model moving further ahead in the curriculum than those children in the hybrid model. So they are getting exactly the same amount.
Another important thing to talk about that, Brett, is the idea that, our goal is to get to a point where we can bring everybody back, and by having them equal, it allows us to bring kids back and be in the same spot if we're coming back in person, as well if for some reason we had to go to all remote for everybody, it would allow everybody to be in the same spot and to continue forward with equal opportunity.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Mrs. Driscoll, we have about 5 more minutes.
Parents want to know if they need 2 sets of school supplies at the elementary level, or if they will be bringing their crayons, their markers, their scissors, folders back and forth on those days that they are doing remote learning.
So one of the things that we've been talking with our teachers about is literally dividing the supplies in half so that students have supplies, especially given the age group that we have with us, the younger kids. We're looking to divide the supplies in half so that they have things that they can keep at home for their distance learning days, and then keeping supplies in school as well.
There was a question related to that, Sarah, in the comments about technology going back and forth, and so I would just add to what Karen said. We do expect the technology that kids have to go back and forth with them if they are in the hybrid model, so that they can access their work both while they're at school and then use their computer when they're at home.
Can you touch on what the
pickup and drop off and the busing will look like this year at the elementary level?
I can pick that one up. Tom, did you mention the Pick My Kid yet, or am I free to go ahead and share that information? Okay, perfect. So one of the things that we recognize is that we all have different needs in terms of arrival and dismissal based on our plot of land and our bus routing and our bus loops and our pickups and our drops offs. But we all recognize that we have a problem with those areas, especially with increased pickup and drop off. So we looked to brainstorm using what other districts do around the country, and we looked into a variety of software options, and one is called Pick My Kid, and it's an app that you have on your phone that you will receive more information about that allows us to know when you have entered our premises, our GPS, circle, if you will, and you will tag in that you're there for pickup. So our hope and we're hoping that it'll be up and running by the first day, but please don't hold me to that. But the hope is that you basically say, I'm here, but you stay in the line, and by the time you get to the front of the line where the children are, your child is brought out to you and entered into the car so that you don't need to get out of your vehicle. That would already kind of mimics what our arrival procedure looks like. But that would change our dismissal procedure so that we do not have large numbers of students or parents in areas. Dudley and Northside are working collaboratively together to make that work for parents that have children to pick up in both areas, and Brooks Hill and JA are working on our own versions of that, because we don't share students with another school, but we each have our own issues that we're working through. In terms of busing, we've been working closely with Peter Lawrence, Director of Transportation, to see what we can do. For many of you who recognize this, JA being on the earlier start time, Dudley, Northside, and Brooks Hill receive many JA buses when they're done with their routes. So we're looking at adjusting times, not by very much, but by a little bit here or there, so that we can make sure that our dismissal of students to pickups versus buses is a little different. In Brooks Hill in general, we usually use the gym to congregate large groups of students waiting for buses in inclement weather. We'll no longer be doing that. And the other buildings have a very similar type of situation where we're mitigating the circumstances of having large groups of kids waiting for either pickup, walkers, or buses. So we are working on that. I can tell from the chat that many people are looking for lots more information on that. I think it will be to come.
And I know Jefferson Avenue being on a different time schedule, there's a lot of questions on that. Rough draft-wise, what we're looking at for our student drop-off is 7:40 a.m. to 8:10, and the logistics on that will be coming. And then for pickup, due to our space, we are looking at having our buses come and roll a little bit early, so then we can open up our whole entire parking lot for parent pickup and have more flexibility. So what we're drafting right now, what that would possibly look like is buses leaving sharply at 2:15 from Jefferson Avenue, with 2:20 being the start of parent pickup.
Brett, I don't know if you want me to just clarify a little bit. Dudley Northside, we have a lot of shared families. And so what we, Aaron Moretta and I are looking to do is have those students who have siblings, Dudley School students that have siblings at Northside, we're looking to have the Northside students come over to Dudley School so that parents would pick up at Dudley School instead of having to go through two pickup lines. And again, just like Meredith and Ryan just spoke to, we're looking at staggering our buses and our pickup schedule so that we can hopefully get buses on the road and out just before we really start doing the parent pickup piece. So we're using our side lot for parent pickup and keeping the buses out front to keep the two groups separated, and lots more details to work out, but we're very hopeful that we're going to be able to streamline it and keep it as efficient as possible.
Thank you. The whole purpose of the app that Mrs. Klus was referring to is to do this in a way that's manageable, that keeps our sites safe, that keeps our children safe, and our parents having the reassurance that this is being done in an organized, thoughtful manner. So those details will be coming out very soon, but that's the premise of using the technology, is so we can do it in an organized fashion. I have two questions. The first question is going to be about kindergarten screening. The second question is going to be about how do we support students with nutrition, meaning how are we providing lunches or breakfasts to our students in need. So the first question comes to us regarding K screening. We obviously haven't been able to get our students in. So Dr. Finger?
Sure. So as you all know, we were not able to screen our students this past spring, and so we are hopeful that upon students coming to us in September, after giving them ample time to get settled in, that we will be able to, do our kindergarten screening at that point in time. We don't have the details completely worked out yet, but we are hopeful that we will be able to manage that within the building, relatively soon into the school year, so that we can use that critical information in terms of making sure that we're meeting kids exactly where they need to be met.
So it is still happening, it's just happening in a different time frame or framework.
That's correct.
Thank you. And that's part of our educational programming pieces that we know that need to be a part of our reopening plans. How do we support students with their nutritional needs? I have Michelle Rosavich, who is our food services director. If she would come forward just to share about how we're managing that as we move forward. Mrs. Rosavich, thank you.
Thank you, Brett. We'll be serving both in school and remotely every day of the week throughout the school year. We are asking families, if you feel that you may qualify for free and reduced meals, to please fill out those applications as soon as possible to submit them. They can be done right on our website. So meals will be served. We have not coordinated yet how the pickup will be for all those virtual families, but that will be coming very soon as we pretty much tie down all the loose ends.
Thank you very much. And as we've been moving through this, clarity has been enhanced. And last week at this time, we didn't have as much clarity as we do as this week, and that will continue. The focus will get sharper. Mrs. Driscoll, I would like to give you one more question, if you have one, and then we'll add closure.
I think you guys, with the slides and what our principals have, I can tell just how much planning has gone into it. I know there's still a lot of questions and clarity that's needed, but I feel like I'm at a point that my questions that came in through the survey have been addressed. And I know that the comments that are coming in through the Facebook Live, you guys will be able to go back and address, or Kelly and I will try and comb back through those and get you guys answers.
Thank you very much for coordinating and organizing these questions, and the survey has helped us frame this conversation. One thing that I know and can reaffirm, that as we move through this process, the questions will always be there. Be assured that our commitment to try to answer them and be stewards to them will remain just as high as it has been through this process. Clarity continues to increase as we move through this. We will update our frequently asked questions. We will be monitoring our chat lines that are on Facebook Lives, and that will help guide us as we move forward. I would also say that our community is amazing. We've had over 450 individuals on this chat line. We really appreciate your partnership. I appreciate the team of educators, from our administrators to our staff members who are on the ground floor putting and developing this puzzle together. Again, these forums have been helpful. They have helped inform our process, and I hope that they've been as meaningful to you as a whole. Together, everyone achieves more. That's the essence of team, and that's what's going to continue to mobilize us and be stronger as a community. We will have a 1 o'clock session with our secondary principals and individuals who are at this forum, Director of Student Services, Food Service, Buildings and Grounds, and of course Dr. Cook and board members will be at that 1 o'clock. There's also a 6:30 meeting where we will focus on health and safety. Thank you very much. Thank you for our technology team for helping bring this forth seamlessly. We'll see everybody at 1 o'clock, and thank you all. Good afternoon, Fairport friends and family members. Thank you for joining us in our community town hall meeting. This is the next iteration of our town hall. I believe this is our 7th, maybe our 8th town hall meeting that we've had on our reopening meetings. These are very important meetings. We've learned so much from our community. It's been essential to our process to continue to interact with our community, to learn from our community, and try to serve the interests of our community, and of course, our number one priority, our incredible students. We're going to get right off in running here. Lots of questions. I have online here Kelly Hodge. Kelly Hodge is our parent rep who will be serving, or has been serving, our grades 6 through 12 PTA. She's been our representative, managing and organizing all the questions and at the forefront of the advocacy in the 6-12 world. Sonia Varillo, who's everything PTA, is also here, and so is Sarah Driscoll, who just got off a Facebook Live session with our K-5 community. Also, I have in front of me Mr. Tim Sliz, who is our Vice President for the Board of Education, who's been along for this ride, learning along with us and having high expectations and representing the board's interest. Joyce Kostick is also been an important member of our process moving forward. She may be coming in very soon. Dr. Stephen Cook from the University of Rochester Medical Center. He is a pediatrician who's been participating. He may be coming as we move through this particular presentation. We have a number of principals here. To my right, I have high school principal Bob Clark, assistant principal Leanna Watt. They'll be speaking on behalf of the 10th, 12th, and of course, newly appointed acting principal, Mr. Dominic Monticelli, for our 9th grade families, who's very interested in serving that community, particularly in this reopening. We also have Mr. David Dunn, who is principal of Martha Brown Middle School. We have Mr. Patrick Grow. You get my head out of there. I know that they're trying to move me out of the way here. He's the principal of Joanna Perrin, and to his left would be Mrs. Short. They will be here on site to answer questions, to interact with the community at large. We also have some other representatives here from our directors who range from technology to food services, and of course, buildings and grounds. If there's questions that arise, we will we'll make sure that we bring them to the forefront. This is about our continuous planning and preparation. Today, we're going to be sharing information of how our plans are unfolding. There's individual plans that have been chosen. You'll learn about the plan that you have chosen in more detail today. I can guarantee you this one thing, that the questions will be abound. We know that there's a reservoir of questions, and we're happy to serve those questions. If we don't get to all those questions, the Facebook Live chat line will continually be updated, and we'll be reviewing that, because this will be ongoing and continuous. We have a frequently asked question document that will be used to continue to answer questions. We are focusing in on the educational programming plans and schedules today. Again, as I know, sometimes we birdwalk from that, and that's okay, but for the most part, we want families to be informed of the hybrid model and the remote learning model. And tonight at 6:30, there'll be another session that will talk about the health and safety protocols. On Friday, I shared information via my weekly communication, important plans regarding our educational programming, in particular the remote learning and the hybrid learning plans. And we are going to seek clarification, and without further ado, I am going to have Kelly Hodge, again, our parent rep for the PTA, who's been an incredible asset to this process and advocate to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in serving the needs of the parent group that she serves. Kelly Hodge. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
All right, so I guess I'll just jump right into it. If we want to just talk about first the hybrid model, and a lot of questions regarding what that exactly is going to look like. You know, what days are going to look like when they're in school, when they're not in school. If you want to talk to that first, and then I can piggyback off of that, that'd be great.
Sounds great. We'll go to the hybrid model. Again, this is all online in our school opening plans, and I'm going to ask, we'll start with our middle school friends, grades 6 through 8. We'll start with the hybrid model. And Johanna Perrin and Martha Brown, I'm proud of the consistency and collaboration.
Brett, I'll start talking a little bit about our hybrid as we're going. You know, with our 2 cohorts, our Monday, Thursday, and our Tuesday, Friday, obviously, the kids that are in school on those days are going to be getting their regular instruction. You know, they'll be attending classes, seeing their teachers, getting assignments, going from there. The kids that are at home on Monday, say, they will be given a task to do by their teachers. So the expectation will be there will be work to do in every class, every day when they are not in school. Those assignments could be anything from a video from a teacher talking about what kind of reading to do or what kind of small write-up to do, to a flipped lesson where the kids are actually watching a teacher teach, then bringing some work back to school with them. Our biggest plan is to make sure those are coordinated so the parents can see where those are located, so that students will know where to go every day, you know, via the teacher's Google Classroom site or checking their email every day so they can find out exactly what work is to be done on those remote days when they're not in school with us. And then vice versa, when the kids come back to school, that's when they'll go over to work they did at home and plan for the next couple days. Our Wednesdays, there'll be a slightly different schedule, but all students that will be remote on Wednesday, they'll be meeting with their teachers via Google Meet, where their classes will come together, like the group that's in first period on both those cohort days will be coming together. So the teacher can coordinate with them to make sure they're on track. And again, whether that's given an assignment that day, talking about what's next up in the next couple of classes or what they've done the previous classes, that's how that'll work. So again, the days they're in school, it's as close to regular school as possible. And then on the hybrid days, the remote days when they're not in person with the teachers, there will be plenty of work to do. We'll be providing some samples of what a day could look like, because that's when the parents, you know, depending on their situations at home and the work the kids have to do, they'll be able to stagger that through the day when it works best for them. But also we want to make sure they're getting the assignments there. So we'll give some sample schedules, what a kid's day could look like at home. If a parent wants to say, hey, let's get up early in the morning, let's do work right now, let's move forward with what we're trying to accomplish for today. Or if because of daycare or a situation doesn't allow them to start some of their work till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, what we'll have, the kids can access it all then and work from there.
Very thorough, no surprise. Just wanted to add a couple of little behind-the-scenes pieces of the cohort.
Is your mic on?
Yeah, thank you. He's so excited here. Sorry about that, a little too excited. Anyway, Mr. Groh, great job. Just wanted to add a few behind-the-scenes pieces on the cohorts. First of all, for the last week, we've been balancing the Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday cohorts, K-12, trying to keep siblings on the same cohort, trying to balance the cohort so when our teachers come in for the hybrid model, if they've got 23 kids in a class, they're looking as close to half and half as possible. Obviously, we've got about 70 kids in each middle school that will be doing all virtual, so our cohort numbers will even be smaller, hopefully giving our students more teacher connection, more teacher opportunity. We're also making sure that we start the year with a balance between content, academics, and getting to know your kids. We understand that last year we've never been before in terms of the closure. This year, we're finding ourselves starting the year without really having kids put closure on last year. So our teachers are going to really work slowly that first couple of weeks to make sure we take care of some of the social emotional learning that needs to happen, get to know the kids, get to know the connections. So look for that in either the hybrid or virtual model. I just want to make one last plug for the Parent Square. That's the new parent communication piece. I know as parents, you are inundated with emails, inundated with communication. And I know a lot of the stuff is out there on the web right now, but it's also nice to kind of hear it firsthand in today's meeting. But we are going to encourage our parents to sign up for Parent Square. We're looking to have that really be a one-shop place for parents to get communication from either their teachers or their buildings. And I know the emails went out, and I know it's one more thing to do. But if you've got that Parent Square connection signed up, I think that's going to just put you further ahead in terms of how we move forward. But we'll be ready for your kids, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn, Mr. Grow. Can you speak about how you're slowing the day down, how you're taking the transitions and staggering them to reduce the density in the hallways, locker usage, et cetera?
Yeah, of course. So, the biggest goal for our kids when they're in the building is to make sure we're limiting the large crowds, the hallway crowding as much as possible. We're working on a schedule to stagger, like say our sixth graders will be leaving their class to go to their next class at a different time between the seventh graders and eighth graders. So in addition to basically half our building being in school on one day, we're knocking that almost into thirds for passing time, so they're not running around the halls and being jammed in like maybe they have been in years past. We're also trying to limit our locker use. For the first time, as far as I remember, Dave would certainly have this longer since he's been here so long, our students will be using backpacks in the middle schools this year, so we can cut down on the time they have to stop at lockers. We're looking at stopping at the lockers in the morning when they get there, possibly at lunchtime, and then at the end of the day. But not in between classes as they're moving from class to class, because we want those hallways moving freely. I'd like to say quietly, but at least orderly, so we're getting from A to B without too much interaction with each other. The same thing, we talked today, Dave and I, about how our cafeterias are going to look during lunches. So we're making sure students are spaced out in the cafeteria while they're eating. And we're trying to do everything possible, whether that's using some different routes in the buildings, to slow down, like you said, that density of crowds during the school day when the kids are there.
As our students come in the building, we're going to ask them to go to the locker and then go right to the teacher classrooms. We have asked that our staff be in their classrooms at 7:30, which is when the first bus drops off. So that'll be an opportunity to kind of slow the day, just having some, soft, quiet conversations with teachers and students as they enter the buildings. At the end of the day, we're also going to be holding our students that are taking parent transportation home 10 minutes, so we can socially safe distance our students to get on the buses, so that our buses can leave the parking lot in an orderly and quick fashion without having 30 to 50 cars in there. So that's going to be new for us. We're going to be hitting that communication pretty hard, that if your child is going to be picked up at 3 o'clock or after school, we're going to ask that you not enter the parking lot until 3 o'clock. So after 2:50, our students then can go to the locker and exit the parking lot pretty safely without having to worry about all of the students out there at the same time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Grow, I know that we'll probably be talking about arrival and departure as we move through this process, but I would like to have our high school friends speak to what their hybrid model day framework looks like. And we have Dr. Cook, who just came in the room from the University of Rochester Medical Center. He's a pediatrician practitioner, and we have board members. Please, at any point in time, if you feel like you need to interject, by all means, so we'd love to hear from you and share your perspectives. Thank you. Mr. Clark, Ms. Watt,
Yeah,
and Mr. Monticelli.
thank you for the opportunity to weigh in on this. Not sure if my microphone's working, but as far as the hybrid schedule goes at the high school, you see the visual that Mr. Provenzano is pulling up right now for, this really applies 9-12. Students have been divided obviously into two cohorts, as we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. We have the Monday-Thursday cohort and the Tuesday-Friday cohort. Again, making every effort to align with families across the district to make sure that if students are in elementary buildings or middle school buildings, that they're in the same cohort, day-wise as their family members in the high school. In terms of how the instruction looks, again, if you're in a Monday-Thursday cohort, you come to school on those days following a traditional daily bell schedule, and on Tuesday and Friday, students will be directed, could be either synchronous or asynchronous instruction, simply meaning that the teacher, based on the discipline, may decide that in terms of the content, that they're better suited for following along with continuous instruction. They might make a choice to do that synchronously. Again, they also might decide to go asynchronous and assign independent work.
Can you explain that, like the definitions of each one?
Yep, I'll do that again. Yep. So synchronous learning is the idea that instruction continues on Tuesday, even though the other cohorts and instruction would continue to move forward, but students at home would be participating in a lesson, from their kitchen table, and that affords a teacher the opportunity to have that continuous movement in terms of curriculum, because many of our courses end in Regents exams and AP exams. We want to make sure that our teachers have that discretion to move the curriculum in a way that our students can know and understand it and be able to apply it. And then Wednesdays is very similar to the middle schools in the sense that we have whole group virtual instruction and 20-minute classes throughout the day. And there's a lunch break for everyone, a screen break, so that our staff have the opportunity to norm expectations and to work collaboratively, consistently modifying. One of the most important things all of our teachers are going to be doing this year, K-12, is meeting our students where they're at. And so this is a great opportunity for them to talk about how students are acquiring material and if they need to modify the pace of instruction. And so they'll be meeting a consistent basis across the courses and grade levels to make sure that those conversations are taking place. And it's a great time for our students to take that mental health break and take care of themselves and have a screen break as well. And again, the rest of the day, the 20-minute sessions. So I think that's in total the hybrid, set up for the high school. Mrs. Watt, do you want to talk just a little bit about our students that may be attending more frequently based on their programming needs?
Absolutely. So there are some students, depending on their IEP needs and the programming that they're scheduled into at Fairport High School, who might be attending school 4 days a week. And so that would be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. As a result, obviously, they're getting that direct instruction. Wednesday looks the exact same for those students, however, or learning remotely from home, but following the exact same modified bell schedule that was previously shown here. Many of those students also attend some of our BOCES programming, and so hopefully you've been able to keep up with some of the communications I'm sending and that BOCES is sending relative to the frequency of them attending those programs. Again, BOCES has some parent forums that they're also holding, one of which is this evening at 6:30, where they're going to be able to answer some questions relative to students attending that programming. Again, if you have any questions about that special education continuum and the frequency of students coming in and out of the building, and more specifically to the families who might only be coming in 2 days but have concerns about what other opportunities might exist for a student who has an IEP, a 504 plan, or anything like that, please do reach out because we can talk to you specifically about what's available to those students outside of the days that they're in in-person instruction.
I just want to provide a little bit of clarity around the letters of the day and the cohort letters. And there's certainly not a mistake. It's very intentional. The letters of the day in our normal high school schedule are really only in existence for our labs and for PE instruction. And so we have a letter day schedule that was emailed home this morning by Mr. Page, was posted on Parent Square as well. And again, that aligns us for the entire year so that we can get the required number of labs in for the school year. And so we understand that the cohorts were labeled as such that those two things do not relate to one another. And again, we have a specific letter day schedule so that our students are very well aware of this. When they get assigned lab, that'll be noted on their schedule and they'll know exactly what day they have lab. And you'll have a schedule that you can refer to for them. But again, in terms of the rest of the functioning of the school, 9-12, that only pertains to our PE classes, our science labs, and then sometimes some of our related services.
Thank you for the point of clarification. Mr. Monticelli, is there something you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, just a huge wholehearted welcome, and I'm very excited to work with all the families at Minerva DeLand, our great students. And I've already had a number of conversations with staff, families, students, so everything I've heard and I know about the building and the culture is that and more. So I can't wait to work more closely with you. 9-12, we've been very aligned this summer in our planning and our collaboration, so that's one of the silver linings in this whole situation. We're very aligned, lockstep, so not a whole lot to add as far as the nuances of the schedule. I just wanted to add, the question was, what's it going to feel like or look like? And it's going to feel small and safe when students walk in the building, with the decreased density. So there's going to be slightly less than half the population in the building at a given time. So their classrooms are going to feel weird at first, for lack of a better term. They're going to be spaced out. There's going to be 9 to 12 students in their classes for the most part, but it's going to feel safe. So if anybody's concerned, I know there's concerns. I've got family health concerns as well, but I'm very confident that we're going to do this in a very safe way, where students are not only safe, but they're engaged with their teachers and their classmates. You know, one of our focuses is community. So what decisions are we making, and how does it build community in our classroom? So you can be assured that that's what it's going to look and feel like from a big picture, culture perspective.
I think the one distinguishing attribute from the middle school to the 9/12, I'm going to ask probably Mrs. Short speak to the pacing of curriculum in the middle school, and of course the principals if you want to chime in. But Mrs. Short, assistant principal at Joanna Perrin, what would be the distinguishing attribute between a 6th, 7th, and most of our 8th grade classes relative to a 9th through 12th curriculum modality?
So our 6th through 8 classes, unless they're credit bearing, such as algebra and earth science and some of our world language classes, they have the ability to be slowed down where the students are able to dig deep on some major topics, but also the teachers are allowed to focus on the social emotional health of the students, getting to know the students, understanding their learning style a little bit better, and just completely slowing down the day so that they're able to make sure that the students are getting some of those basic needs met, social emotionally, but also curricularly. Whereas at the high school level, they may have to speed it up a little bit and tackle the concepts daily. I know that the social emotional health of the students will be tended to at the high school level as well, just in a different manner. So that's not to take away anything from what the high school is doing.
Mrs. Watt or Mr. Clark, do you want to expound on that, the high-stakes assessments that are there and the reason to move the ball down the field with a little bit more urgency?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, as we come into the school year, we're expecting that those assessments will take place. This past spring, based on the emergency nature of the closing, the state forewent those assessments. But, again, given the opportunity to have all this time for planning, our assumption is coming into the school year that we are going to have them, and I think teachers are going to plan accordingly. But having said that, as Mrs. Short said, we are absolutely committed to starting the year by building connections with students. I think Mr. Dunn had referred to this earlier. Last year we had 23 weeks to build connections with students before we went out. And this year it's going to be extremely important that we spend the first few weeks really getting to know our kids' stories so that they can move along with that pace of instruction. But, a lot of the feedback that we got from kids about the spring and how that went, we've been sharing that feedback with students to make sure that we are again, meeting them where they're at and making sure the class is with us before we get going too far on that train.
I'd just like to emphasize that we are aware that there's a chat line. We also have questions that were from the Google survey. Thank you to our PTA for organizing the Google survey. That will serve as our main platform for getting questions. We also recognize that there is a chat line, and we will continually update our frequently asked questions that we gather from this Facebook Live session. But there's one out there that speaks to, I'll be making a recommendation to the Board of Education to amend the calendar where our start date will be on Thursday, September 10th. We do realize that promotes 2 first days of school. Our educators will be supporting, providing information, and communication will be coming about what that looks like as we start the school year. Well noted, great question, but again, the questions will continually be there, and we'll address them as we move forward. We just aren't ready to answer that in a comprehensive manner, but we know that that's a factor that we need to consider. Mrs. Hodge.
Okay, so can you just, thank you for touching base on the hybrid model, but can you just address 2 parts of that? How lunches are going to look or work, and how gym classes are going to work? Because I know that those are big questions that we got.
Sure, I'll jump in and just talk about lunches at Fairport High School and then PE as well. So as far as lunches are concerned, I'll do very quick math for you here. Because we're bringing in roughly half of the students, that's roughly, in our largest cohort, I think 642 students. We're used to having over 1,400 students in the building. And we have 3 cafeterias and 3 lunch periods. And the quick math is that with our seniors heading out of the building for senior privileges, that leaves us with roughly 158 kids or so per lunch, and divided amongst 3 cafeterias, we have plenty of capacity to spread out in a 6-foot socially distant manner. And if we need any overflow, we have portable tables that we can set up in our large foyer, and if need be, potentially even into part of the gym. Now, we're not anticipating needing that. We think that we're going to be perfectly fine with the existing space that we have, but that has been a consideration in the past. So I think we're in good shape. Now, having mentioned the gyms and physical education, fortunately, Fairport High School is a very large campus, and I know our PE staff is planning their units of study in a way that get our kids outside, where they can have that 12-foot socially distant space. And they're going through the process right now of identifying, what units of study are best suited for this learning environment. And they're working collaboratively with the athletic director, Mr. Fritz Killian, and the 612 PE staff to identify what are the best ways for us to move forward with that. I know that they're collaboratively working on expectations for when work is assigned and what PE looks like virtually, and we're going to be communicating that out very soon.
Can I just jump in
Middle
real quick
schools, we
and
just
ask
spent this
about,
morning taking our
locker
cafeteria
room
tables off to
usage?
the.
Sorry.
Mrs. Hodge, would you let Mr. Donahue would like to address that question as well at the middle school?
Yep.
Thank
Yep,
you.
No problem. I just wanted to piggyback on that and just address locker rooms if they could as well, and utilizing the locker rooms. That's
The
all.
locker room.
Thank
So,
you.
Mr. Clark, if you want to speak to locker room, and then we'll go to Mr. Dunn to follow up.
Yep, and I don't want to get in too much into the nuance of the details. I think, unfortunately, our PE staff haven't had a ton of time to have these conversations. They're working on them, like I said, as we speak. So I think with regards to the dressing component, when and if that's required, it'll be done in a socially distant way. And fortunately, the PE locker rooms, at least at the high school, have been completely renovated, and there's a lot more space there. And they're built for a capacity of 2,000 students. And again, at any given time, we're only going to have 600 students or so in the building, and in any given period, half of what we normally have. So I imagine that they're going to be making some instructional decisions about when to change and when not to change, and making the most of the time that they have, and utilizing some other less exerting PE units of study. And again, if Mr. Killian wants to jump in and comment more on that, he's here. But again, I think that's some of the work that they have in front of them, and some of the collaboration that they're going to be participating in between now and throughout the school year, quite honestly, to adjust to what our students can and can't do.
Thank you.
If there's a director who wants to come forward and answer that, there's a podium with a mic here. Mr. Dunn, if you want to speak to some of your thoughts around lunch and PE locker rooms, and then Mr. Killian can speak to PE curriculum and the delivery of that.
Our middle school phys ed teachers have been pretty active. Mr. Crow and I met last week, and they've decided that they're not using the locker rooms at the middle school. They're too small. So phys ed, they're coming one day a week because it's a 4-day cycle. So they're going to be encouraged to wear their phys ed appropriate clothes to school on those days, but they will not have access. They will not be in the locker room. They're going to be encouraged to bring their backpacks, and they're going to be spaced outside the gymnasium in a hallway. I just got notes from their meeting this morning. They're pretty detailed in terms of they want arrows guiding the kids in the gymnasium area as well as outside the gymnasium area. So our middle school staff have been meeting a couple of times. I know they're on it. And again, their big picture is making sure that your kids are socially distanced and safe. There's a lot of other questions that I can't answer yet that Mr. Killian may get into in the next couple of days in terms of just the whole phys ed activities. Just real quick on the dining halls, we took our tables out. We found that we were not getting many kids at each large table. So we're setting our dining halls up with student desks and from the classrooms that we're emptying because we're only having about half of the desks in the classrooms for most of our classrooms. We're able to get more students in there, and as Mr. Clark did with the math, we're going to be able to do it. The fact that we're bringing only half of our kids in, minus about 30 or 40 kids that have gone virtual, we should be able to socially distance our kids in the dining halls and kind of put them in a way where they can still have conversations with each other, but yet still be 6 feet apart.
Mr. Grove?
Dave and I have been pretty consistent in terms of talking about this and planning, so we're on the same exact page as Martha Brown. No locker rooms will be used this year. We will be having long conversations with students about what to wear in those phys ed days, because we're obviously going to be trying to get outside as much as possible, so we want them dressed appropriately. So on a day where it's a little cool outside, we're still going out. So we want to making sure we're ready and able to go, because they won't be changing, and so we do want them bringing the proper clothes, like Dave said, on the one day a week they'll be having phys ed. And same goes for lunches, although we'll be socially distancing and keeping that safety regs in place right there to make sure kids are safe. We do want it comfortable in them to have a chance for them to unwind and talk to students, or to each other on that. So we're doing all we can to make sure we're planning that way to make sure it's safe and good for the students, again, to have that as close to regular lunch experience that they have had in years past.
The inspiring piece of this journey, and it has been a journey, is the pieces of the puzzle are starting to form. And we are starting to see educators, as I have been sharing, once we receive confirmation on our direction, they are, and part of this process, we have lead teachers, our teacher leaders, many different groups of staff members interacting, developing these plans, and really discussing how do these plans now translate given the guidance that we've received. So as Mr. Dunn said, we've had groups of teachers in learning and growing and sharing and doing what they can to put their mark on this safety, health and safety plan. I'm going to ask Mr. Killian to speak a little bit about PE. He is also our Director of Health and PE in addition to athletics. Mr. Killian.
Thank you. I can confirm that at the high school, our students and at Minerva, they will not be changing for physical education, and that was also echoed by our two middle school principals. In terms of phys ed instruction, our units are going to be designed where we're going to be social distancing as much as possible and adhering to the guidance from our State Department of Education and County Health Department. You're going to be seeing units such as yoga, archery, the team sports, anything that we do as far as those activities, they're going to have to be modified in terms of sharing equipment. That is not going to be able to happen. There are cleaning protocols that we have to put in place, and we are meeting with our Director of Buildings and Grounds, Aaron Smith, later this week to talk about those factors. So our goal is to provide a quality experience for our students within the environment that we're in right now, and it's going to be modified. We have had talks about looking at some assignments differently. For example, there may be an assignment where students are asked a very simple question: should NCAA athletes be paid right now? That's a hot topic. Students may have some input on that, and it could be something where we're looking at more effective domains, cognitive domains in terms of instruction. Physical activity will still be there, but in terms of where we are with COVID and virtual instruction, we're really going to have to be creative.
Thank you, Mr. Killian. Mrs. Hodge.
Thank you very much. Can we switch gears and go to explaining what virtual days would look like in that model?
Virtual days, we will start with our middle school friends, and then we will move up to the high school.
So for our students that are planning on going on the full virtual model, we are currently working out what the schedules will look like. But what we can say is we will be doing a teacher, we'll say social studies in 7th grade. One of our social studies teachers will be meeting with our students as a fully remote group, where they will meet with them via Google Meet on, let's say, Monday and Thursday at a designated time each week, just like a regular schedule. Then also on Wednesday. And those students will follow the hybrid schedule for those remote days. So they will be meeting with, and I'm saying in person, but via the computer, 3 days a week with a teacher. And then those opposite 2 days where they'll be doing those work assigned by the teacher to try to catch up. On our sample schedule that Mr. Provenzano has up there right now, this is just a sample, but we'll be trying to balance it out. So some students will have some classes on Monday, Thursday, then other classes on Tuesday, Friday. So they'll be engaged each day during the week with teachers. The Wednesday, since no students will be in the building, they'll still be following the regular virtual model where they will be meeting with, say, their science and math teachers. And And I would like to say, just on this schedule right there, I know we have science up there twice. Social studies would say take the place of the first period on Monday and Thursday. So again, it's just a sample, but so they'll be meeting with all their core teachers, as you can see, twice a week, phys ed twice a week, then the specials, which could be for, say, an 8th grader, it's technology, or it could be music, or it could be art. So they will be getting their full schedule and meeting with teachers virtually as much as our students are seeing the kids in the hybrid model, meaning 2 times a week, then also on the Wednesday.
Pat Grow did a great job. Again, we're coordinating opportunities where some students might take, some Arthur Brown students might take a course at Johanna Parent where the numbers are low, perhaps in an earth science or in a algebra. So we're trying to consolidate our staff between both buildings, as well as using the staff that we have in each building. I know that our schedules are hoping to be up on the portal on Friday. I'm not sure our all virtual student schedules are going to be finalized by Friday, because for the 2 middle schools, it's 140 kids with about 7 course requests each. And that's over 400 different pieces to this puzzle that we're trying to do intentionally and accurately. So at the end of the day, when your schedules are posted, they'll look very similar to a student's schedule that's in the hybrid model. Very similar.
Mr. Dunn or Mr. Grow, or of course, Mrs. Short, will these students who chose for the virtual 100% have a different level of education? Will they be getting more curriculum because they're solely virtual?
I would say that they're going to be identical in the amount of contact with teachers. They are going to look pretty much the same as a student who comes into school, with the only difference being that they're receiving their education through a screen, but there will be a live teacher talking to them, presenting to them, not any more, not any less than a student who is sitting in school.
That's an important factor, that equity component, and the need to just make sure that we're looking at the curriculum, narrowing the curriculum, meeting students where they are, going deeper, not necessarily more.
Sorry, Mr. Provenzano, one more thing too. For some of the classes, because I know the high school has a gargantuan task of trying to manage with so many classes being offered at the high school. So for us, for example, if there is only 2 kids that have opted into the virtual model, and I'm making this up, in German 2, between us and Martha Brown, that could be a time where those children or students would be Google Meeting into that class. We wouldn't have a teacher one-to-one with them for that. So we will work on that, and all parents and kids that are affected by something like that would be notified by us, just to let them know exactly what each of their classes will look like.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grove. 912.
I can speak to that part of it. 2 of the big pieces that were, I think, the takeaways from previous meetings, coming from families and from students, is that the programming was extremely important. The classes that students had elected to take, whether that was an AP course or a music course, whatever the range of selections were for our students, it was important to maintain that for our families. The second piece that we heard from families was that maintaining some sense of community within the classroom was also really important, not feeling pulled away from their peers, rather kind of being embedded into the classroom. And so over the course of the past few weeks, we've been working really hard at that with our teachers, with student representatives who've met with us and have really worked hard to problem solve. And so over the weekend and prior to that, I've been communicating directly with our virtual families to give them updates as they are coming together. So to sort of summarize, our students in the virtual model, their schedules look identical to any other student schedule. That meaning any classes that you sat down with your school counselor to take, whether again that's an AP class, whether that's a co-taught class, whether that means BOCES, any of those classes that you selected are still part of your schedule. We are going to be bringing those virtual families into class every Monday and every Thursday. So there will be students sitting in the classroom with the teacher providing direct instruction, and there will also be students who will be synchronously hearing the exact same instruction. and to the extent possible, participating in the class. And so clearly there are several pieces that will be challenging in doing this, including labs, including, participation. What if a student has a question and they're remote? And so again, the question and answer document that I sent home directly to families addresses many of those issues. I would encourage you to take a close look at that. Further, I would also sort of say, and I shared this with the students when we met, as a virtual student, it's important to remember you may log into your class on that Monday and Thursday and recognize you may be the only person who's remotely entering that class, or you could be one of 5 students. So it's just important to remember that's going to vary depending on the classes that you're enrolled in and depending on the number of students who have also opted for the virtual model. Another piece that's important, I think, to highlight is that they'll be all together with their whole class every Wednesday, just like everybody else, okay? And on the opposite days, when they are sort of not necessarily part of the direct classroom instruction, they too will have assignments that they can find in Google Classroom, or again, a teacher may opt to bring them in synchronously depending on the discipline.
This applies to Minerva DeLand as well, correct?
I know that Minerva DeLand is, again, working very closely with us to align in that way, and that is our hope, yes, that it will apply across the board 9-12.
Yeah, that's correct. Like I said, we've been aligned this summer in our planning. Some of the communication pieces might be, we're there, but my role started 4 days ago officially at Minerva DeLand. So, we're working collaboratively with our staff and our students and our families in the high school to align these pieces. I would say, to that point, Mrs. Watt referred to our communication with families, all stakeholders this summer in this planning process. And, those virtual learning expectations, the common themes that they kept coming out repeatedly from everybody, every stakeholder was, consistency, flexibility, and communication. So this model is not perfect, right? There's going to be more problem solving to come, but we're going to over communicate in the coming days, weeks as we make this work. I think the other piece to share with this model is that it makes it very streamlined to go if we transition back to a normal school day setting. So, if everything works well here in the next month or two, and we go back to full school, this is going to be an easy transition into a full school setting. So we're looking forward to that. We're very hopeful for that, and we're planning for that.
The only other piece I'd like to add to that is I'm just looking at some of the questions in the chat. There isn't, at least again, 9-12, there's no different supply lists that our virtual students might need. You remember too that Google Classroom works very much in that way as an organizational tool. It helps you keep documents that you're getting, notes that you're getting, videos. It really helps keep students organized. That said, obviously some students will prefer the hard copies, and as such we have a pickup day that's scheduled at Fairport High School for not only our students who need technology, but those students in our virtual model too, who may need hard copies, who may need calculators or different tools to be able to complete, whether it's a science lab, math problems, anything like that at home.
Can I just tack on one little comment to that piece
Please.
of things? There are very few instances, I think, for years, parents have asked us, what should we get in terms of supplies? Aside from a graphing calculator, which is one thing that's particular to specific math classes, we don't generally assign lists in the beginning of the school year. So this year is actually really no different. Most of that direction would come directly from the teacher, and they're usually very minimal in nature. Some very specific, our high-end art students might have specific, things that they might have for themselves, but all those directions come from the teacher. In the instance that they may share equipment, let's say in a lab environment, cleaning supplies will be available. That'll be directed by the teacher in following along safety guidelines. The cleaning won't be done by students. Anytime there's any kind of shared materials, we'll have processes in place for that. And again, our teachers are working very hard to put those things together as we speak.
In summary, high school is going to be a different experience. They will be cohorted, meaning they will be assigned a Monday, Thursday grouping and follow the Wednesday as well. And on Tuesday and Friday, they will be going through the virtual or independent instruction, depending on the course and teacher. So I think that just distinguishes it and adds a little bit more detail for families. I appreciate the teachers who are right now collaborating on this very concept of how that works, the technology surrounding it. Before we go to our next question, though, I'm going to ask Mr. Devitt to take a moment in 30 seconds or less to speak to Parent Square and our parent university, if you will, or platform where we will be sharing information on what parents need to know for their students' program.
Yeah, Parent Square is a platform where we're looking to keep all of our communications to parents in one place, everything from teacher all the way down to emergency notifications. The system works really wonderfully in that it will email as a default to everybody, and if you would like, you can add the app to your phone, you can register, and then you can see where all those communications live across all your children. So that is a huge step forward for us to keep all of our information in one place. Beyond that as well, we're going to be continuing to use that platform to reference our other help websites. Parents.fairport.org is the current parent portal that we've used for School Tool and food service and all of our other major platforms. But within this, we'll also continue to reference our how-to sites that we're building.
So I would also ask the question about technology. We know that there is a shortage. We have, as soon as we were able to, we ordered Chromebooks for student use to increase the supply chain. However, that supply chain is running kind of thin throughout the world. Can students use the computers that they have at home? For example, maybe they received one, last year through the holiday season. Can they use that as a viable tool?
Absolutely. We're going to allow parents the freedom to choose a district-assigned device or a personal Chromebook, MacBook, Windows laptop, all of which, if the student logs into their Fairport.org Chrome account, their entire instructional resources will be set up for them. We set the default page to go to the launch zone where all of their tools are in one place.
So our goal is to provide those pieces of technology, the tools of technology, as I call them. However, initially, they may be using their own. We'll be asking them in a survey very soon to what extent, so we can prioritize.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be sending a survey out this week that allows parents to respond whether or not they want to use their own devices or if they'd like one initially. All of our orders are in various states of arrival. We've put multiple orders out there, and we've actually changed and split orders so that we could have a better chance of getting a certain model, or we've changed the model so we could also try to get something sooner too.
Thank you very much. I think Mrs. Watt wants to develop some thoughts around some special areas, art and music.
Absolutely. There are several questions around this, and I wish I could give really definitive, specific information, but we are highly aware of the fact that students enrolled in, whether it's an art class, a music class, these are credit-bearing classes, and some of which are capstone courses for students in the field that they're really interested in pursuing once they do graduate. So yes, it's part of the reason that has to remain on their schedule, and we have to try to provide a meaningful experience for our students. So will they have band in the way they've always experienced it? No. Especially if you're a student who's in a virtual setting, you'll continue to receive your lessons, of course, but the whole band, the whole ensemble, any ensemble coming together in that way won't be feasible. Thankfully, our teachers are tirelessly working to find creative ways to provide an experience for them that is meaningful, that does help them move forward with their ambitions related to that particular area. So to the extent possible, we're going to be providing them with opportunities to be together from a distance, to be together remotely, to try to recreate that the best way that we possibly can. The second piece that I see coming up in the chat is the question about materials for the virtual students. Again, we have a well-established system at Fairport High School through our guidance office. It's called our homework request system. It will work the same way, where teachers will be able to organize materials for students. Pick up from parents will be after school, right in our main office area, so as needed. And yes, that could be every 2 weeks, every 5 weeks. It could be as frequently as the teacher and family need to share materials in that way.
Thank you for that point of clarification. I am going to ask Mrs. Hodge to share a question And I do know that there's people out there wondering about our mask policy. The Board of Education has adopted a mask policy that we'll be talking about tomorrow night at the business meeting. So please tune in so you can hear about that mask policy. There's board members here if they would like to say something about that in a moment. Or we can just hold off till later this evening at 6:30 because that fits into the health and safety portion of this conversation. Masking is a priority. The board has made it a priority with a comprehensive policy, which is available through our district website. Mrs. Hodge.
So I have another question. So being that the kids were not going to be utilizing their lockers much during the day, are there going to be accommodations made as far as, a lot of kids have lots of textbooks, or can they keep them at home, have one at home, one at school, big binders, things like that, how are we going to handle that?
Yes, definitely. Like in years past, sometimes we've talked about some of our middle school teachers saying, hey, we need a three-ring binder for social studies, a 3-ring binder for English, a 3-ring one for science. We're talking about combining those a bit more and not having as much to carry around for the students. So instead of having 5 binders for 5 classes, we might be able to have 3 with some dividers in there or 2 with some dividers in there to make sure they're bringing their work from place to place. Our supply list, I think, are going live today, on our website for what students need at each grade level. And we're certainly ready to accommodate the students so they don't have to do that. We don't want them overburdened with carrying things around from class to class. And since the backpacks are new for us this year and new for our students, we want to make sure that's as easy as possible for them. So we're trying to combine as many of those things together as we can to make sure they have the materials they need in class, but not to burden them so they're walking around with a 50-pound weight on their back.
I would add specific to Minerva DeLand as well, as far as lockers and supplies. We do have a supplies list for Minerva DeLand. It is on our website. So if you go there directly, you can see that list. And regarding lockers, Minerva DeLand, we are issuing lockers this year. We have enough space within our lockers, and because of our hybrid split, you're only going to have half your students. So the lockers are going to be assigned. They will be spaced out, so they're not going to be within 6 feet of one another. So pay attention to that on your schedules that are coming out next Friday, this coming Friday, the 21st. And we have an orientation coming up next week, 25th and 26th. So students will have an opportunity to walk their schedules and test their lockers.
Just really quick, Mr. Provenzano, majority of the high school students' textbooks stay at home. Once they're issued, they stay there, and majority of teachers have classroom sets if need be, if they need them in the classroom. So we don't usually see that as an issue. And again, as a rule, most of our high school kids get assigned a locker in 10th grade and don't look at it again until they graduate.
But also a very important nuance that staff is interacting and reflecting upon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
When we keep talking about the social emotional well-being of our students, I've been saying this since the very first days of our reopening, when there was lots of uncertainty, but there was one thing that was certain, is the social emotional needs of our students. I have our Director of Student Services, Mrs. Deborah Miles. She's going to take a moment to talk about how professionals have been developing ideas and plans so we can keep those students and our students' needs at the forefront.
Thank you. They can see this presentation, right? Right, so you can see on the screen right now that there's a 6 through 12 virtual learning expectations, and so that's a nice one-pager in terms of what is expected of your students when they are at home virtually entering the classroom. It is spelled out very clearly, but it also really typically aligns with what we expect for students when they are in school physically, right? The same sense of conduct, the same sense of engagement, following the guidelines in terms of microphones when they should be on and using the chat system and so forth. Obviously, all of that working together will allow for the class to be much more productive with the teacher being able to move through the content. This was also created for our K-5 students as well that we discussed earlier today. And then in addition to that, our PBIS committees, positive behavior intervention supports committees that operate at each building, have created for our teachers PowerPoint lesson plans developmentally appropriate for each of these grade levels in regards to that too. So it really speaks to what we expect of students when they are online in the classroom as well. And then we would just share that for all of our students, we have the same mental health programming and social emotional support that we do, whether they're at home virtually or whether they're in school physically. So if you see anything that is of concern to you, you can certainly reach out to the school counselor or administrator, and we will connect them with the proper supports. Teachers will be well aware of the students in their virtual classes as well, and be watching for any signs of disengagement or concern, and be communicating with school counselors and administrators as well. We will be offering the same level of access to our virtual students as we will to any physical students, right? So when we talk about clubs, we haven't really talked about too much on extracurriculars today, but if we talk about running any clubs, I think the plan would be that they would be running virtually, and so then therefore all students would have access to those opportunities so that they're equally engaged. And then in addition to that, our Director of Special Programs, Pam Serrani, is working very closely with our instrumental and vocal music programs. And so there will be opportunities for our virtual students to also be able to partake in their instrumental program as they have in the past, obviously done through virtual exploration. Thank you.
Mrs. Miles mentioned there'll be opportunities for our educators to have access to professional learning. We'll be using our onboarding days in September through our adjusted calendar to bring staff through a series of opportunities to interact with these resources to support students in the early part of September before the school year begins. And this is why we have a modified calendar. We'll be having 4 days, as per my recommendation to the board, to adjust the schedules so educators can interact with such plans that Mrs. Miles and our directors and principals are speaking to. Mrs. Hodge.
Okay, well, I have a lot more questions, but just, I think this one needs to be addressed on this forum right now. As far as lunches and breakfasts and things like that, being available to both the hybrid kids and the virtual kids, what is the plan for that, and how do families either enroll in that virtually or, find out where to get that information?
Michelle Rusavich, who is our food service director, will be speaking to how we are supporting students from a very important nutritional perspective. Thank you.
So we'll be feeding kids both in school and those students that are learning virtually. We will have pickup locations that we have not decided yet where they'll be, but they will be at school locations, just not sure which ones yet, where the parents can pick up or students can pick up their meals daily if they're not in school. And I didn't hear the end of that the end of that question. Was there? Okay, and those, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. For those that are virtual.
Where they can access that. Mm-hmm.
So for those students that are virtual, we'll be offering them both breakfast and lunch at that pickup site at the buildings. We're also encouraging families that if you feel that you are eligible for free and reduced meals, that you do go on our website and fill out the application for free and reduced meals and submit that ASAP.
Mrs. Hodge, one more question.
Sorry, I'm trying to find one that's a big one. I guess, did you talk, I'm sorry, I don't think we addressed the survey for Chromebooks, laptops, did we?
The survey for Chromebooks and laptops will be coming out this week. Mr. Devitt shared his thoughts or shared that those will be coming out hopefully either by the end of today or tomorrow, so we can get an idea on how we will distribute Chromebooks. We'll be asking families to share their access to technology and their need to technology so we can distribute accordingly. There are shipments that will be coming in as there's a worldwide shortage or narrowed supply chain because of the pandemic.
Okay, so can I ask one other quick question? The kids who are in the virtual model, I guess this pertains to both, maybe the K-5 and the 6-12 world, but are they going to be one Google invite that happens recurringly, or is it going to be something new that happens, you know, on a weekly or daily basis, just for parents to keep organized?
You know, I think it really depends on what's going on in the class at any particular time. You know, teachers may be doing breakout sessions that might require multiple Google Meets, and I think that what you can expect in terms of normalcy and consistency is that, unlike the spring where different teachers were using different platforms as we sort of adjusted on the fly, all of our teachers will be using the Google platform and facilitating all of the meets through that. And one of the things I think that, you know, we haven't touched on, but we probably should, is part of the onboarding of students in the fall is going to be talking about, you know, the other things that are afforded in that Google Suite. And so we've heard kids talk about, like, how do I keep track of all those things? And because they're in the Fairport suite of Google platform, you know, teaching them to use the Google Calendar to manage those Google Meets and to be able to click in and out of the calendar is going to be something that I think teachers spend some time, again, norming those procedures with them. So the answer to your question is not really an easy one because there's somewhat specific to every discipline and every class. But teachers will be using, you know, taking advantage of the breakout ability to have small groups. And so I would expect that that's consistently inconsistent, if you will, because it's going to depend.
That's part of the new environment.
Right.
You know, I mean, I think the
Depends on the
teachers,
teachers.
yes, the teachers will have to manage that, just like it's part of their new lesson planning process, is to make sure that everybody has access to the invite or the platform that they're using.
Yeah, I think the goal was, though, to house those in Google Classroom. So rather than excessively emailing students, right, to be able just to post the link that they need on a regular basis for them to be able to find easy access.
I could squeeze one more in for you, Kelly.
All right, fantastic. So we didn't really touch on absences and how they would be handled. And you know, we have everybody here. It'd be great to know, you know, how they're going to be handled. How do they check in or not check in, or let you know, or, you know, if they're sick, do they need a doctor's note? All that kind of fun stuff.
Student absence. Mrs. Miles, if you want to come, and I know Mr. Clark might have something to say, why don't you get, you know, if you feel like you want to address that, Mr. Clark, after Mrs. Miles, that's fine.
Sure, so I can cover a couple of things that have been in the chat regarding this. First of all, Parent Square is going to have a daily health check-in that parents are going to need to do for all of their students for the days they physically come to school. So that is a really quick health screen in terms of symptoms, fever, and that type of thing. There is a way to do it, I think, if all of your kids are healthy, that you can click on all of them and just quickly submit. But at the same time, if you have one particular student that might have symptoms, then you need to input that. That will be open from a certain time in the evening to a certain time in the morning, and then at which we would be monitoring those results to check students and make sure that we understand why they're out. There's a lot of information about students with symptoms and students that might be out ill. I really would, for the interest of time, defer you to the website on the homepage. If you go to the fact sheet icon, there is a very specific, detailed 2 to 3 pages on all of the different things parents will need to do if a student comes down with symptoms, if a student is at school with symptoms and sent home, if a student tests positive, like every scenario is there. So I would just ask that you refer to that fact sheet for your use. And then attendance, we are keeping attendance. And so as we had said earlier today with virtual attendance, it may be a situation, certainly these kids are older, 6 through 12, so it's a little bit probably easier in that they can attend to classes. But for other kids that were off at a child care center and parents are working, then there's just a point at which you can go on and say that my student, I think we're going to do some sort of attendance thing, right? Where we're going to go on and say that my student is going to participate in learning. So that just means that at some point during the day, they're going to partake in learning on their hybrid off days. But I'll defer to Mr. Clark to get a little bit more specific on the attendance tracking.
So I guess I would just focus on the nuance of reconciling attendance. So with so many of our students at the secondary level, there are what we call known absences, and without getting into too much of the detail, teachers are planning on for asynchronous instruction, let's say on off days. Attendance can be taken by participating in learning, as Mrs. Miles was just saying, by completing an assignment and submitting that to a teacher. So there's a degree of flexibility in that. I do think that this new format and this new delivery model is going to make things a little different for, say, somebody that is out, and instead of being assigned work independently, they may be able to participate virtually. I think that that's going to be something that is communicated through teachers. It might just be easier than putting work together and managing that way. So attendance can be taken in many different formats. The state is prescribed some flexibility and leeway for us in order to do that. And so teachers will have a plan in place, and they'll communicate that in the beginning stages of classes, and they'll also communicate that to parents so that they understand how to handle that stuff. And again, the reconciliation of attendance, which is something that we typically do at the end of each day, will probably take place within 24 hours as we try to, figure out what everybody's stories are. And so anytime we have concerns about a student that may not be attending regularly, we're going to be working collaboratively with that family to understand what's the underlying issue behind that.
Thank you, Mr. Clark and Mrs. Miles. One thing I know for certain, as I shared in the beginning, questions beget questions, and we are committed to being a steward to addressing and answering those questions as we move through this. We have a highly functional and dynamic FAQ section that's attached to our school opening week plans. We are constantly updating it and making sure that this ever-changing landscape is reflected in the FAQ section. Tonight we'll be speaking more to the health and safety requirements. You'll see this all-star cast, members of this all-star cast and more. Part of that tonight at 6:30, same social media platforms. Please know how grateful we are. Thank you to our PTA liaisons who have been part of this process, making sure that our parents and the parents that they serve and the children, those needs are being met through these forums. Couldn't do it without their voice and advocacy and partnership. To our incredible administrative team, who, once they've got their hands around this plan and started developing it from a managerial perspective, things have really started to come together. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention our staff, who at this very time are owning it and making it part of their repertoire and becoming fluent in the nuance of all the guidance that we've received. So we appreciate their partnership and ownership as we move through this. Together, everyone achieves more. I've been saying that throughout our process. We will continue to learn together and grow together. We will monitor and adjust. We know that the questions are still there. We will be visiting this frequently. We hope that this met your needs as a community. We will continually interact and learn from each other. I'm signing off now till 6:30 this evening. Thank you very much.